Among the invasive species in the world, there is a species of snail that is considered the most feared invasive species for agriculture. Especially in Japan, the number of golden apple snails has increased thousands of times in the past few years and caused a headache for the Japanese government. So how did the golden apple snail cause damage to Japan? We invite you to explore with us the terrible harm of golden apple snails to Japanese agriculture. Called an invasive species, golden apple snails certainly cannot originate in Japan. They originate in South America. They are an invasive species that poses a threat to crops, ecosystems, and even humans. The golden apple snail has spread to many other parts of the world through intentional or accidental introduction. Called apple snails because they can grow to the size of an apple or tennis ball. These molluscs can wreak havoc on both agriculture and the environment and can also carry infectious diseases for humans. They are listed among the 100 most invasive species in the world. It is believed that golden apple snails were first brought to Japan in the early 1980s, both for the ornamental trade and as a food source for other pets. However, snails are not a popular delicacy and their trade as a food source is not well developed. Large numbers of apple snails were removed and began to inhabit local waterways. Because this species of snail can grow and reproduce all year round, as long as there is enough water, in just a short time, they have formed a huge population throughout the area. In recent years, floods have occurred frequently and climate change has accelerated their spread. Invasive apple snails can cause significant economic damage, primarily as pests of wet rice fields. In Japan, this invasive species causes economic losses ranging from $425 million to $1.5 billion each year. In addition to eating rice plants, golden apple snails can eat 100% of newly sown rice plants in one day. These snails are said to eat more than 20 other crops, including vegetables and taro. Invasive apple snails pose a number of threats to biodiversity and native ecosystems. In Japan, native snails are increasingly rare while invasive apple snails are increasingly abundant. Large numbers of invasive apple snails consume aquatic plants, causing serious destruction of ecosystems in some localities. Invasive apple snails also have an impact on human health because they parasitize a roundworm called Angiostrongylus cantonensis, also known as rat lungworm. People infected with rat lungworm have symptoms similar to bacterial meningitis, and although in most cases recover, the disease can sometimes lead to neurological problems and even death. There are various control measures that can be used to control the impact and spread of invasive apple snails. Adult snails can be collected and removed from rice fields. Synthetic chemical pesticides are also used against these snails. However, it causes unwanted impacts on the environment, non-target species, and even human health. Therefore, the use of chemicals is limited in Japan. In some rural areas, Japanese farmers also release ducks into their fields to control the number of invasive apple snails. This snail species is considered a rich food source for ducks raised on the farm. Therefore, duck grazing not only controls invasive apple snails, but also provides a source of nutrients to increase egg production in ducks. However, measures to control invasive apple snails are only taking place on a small scale because the number of the snail species is also increasing rapidly. Each year, the number of apple snails can increase 200 times because of their strong reproductive ability. Therefore, Japan has not been able to devise the most effective policy to prevent and destroy this invasive snail species. In Southeast Asia, agriculture is also heavily affected by invasive apple snails. However, in recent years, farmers have been able to control the number of these snails and prevent them from destroying crops. Even in many rural areas, apple snails have become a commercial species that helps farmers develop their economy. Because apple snails have been processed into a popular dish in many regions. Farmers harvest large quantities of apple snails in the field and sell them to traders to increase their income. They are transported to poultry or aquaculture farms as food for ducks, geese, or fish. However, scientists recommend that people should not consume apple snails because they contain many parasitic bacteria. Today's video ends here. How do you feel today? Please comment a lot below to let us know. Don't forget, click like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. For now, goodbye and see you again in the next videos.